Hi, this is the OUR Path to Research podcast, an Office of Undergraduate Research podcast which highlights the incredible research at McMaster.
We'll be sharing tips and opportunities regarding research for students. I'm your host, Cianne.
And I'm Andy.
And we are so excited to have two very special guests here with us today, Andro and Zaynab. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your experience with your OUR courses. We just want to get a little bit to know you and to share that with our viewers today. So do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I'm Andro Rizk. I'm a year 2 student in the Department of Psychology, Neuroscience, and Behaviour, and I'm pursuing a degree in that department with a mental health specialization. The courses that I took were Science 2 SC1, Science 2 SC D, also 1, and Science 2 SCB1. These are all one-unit experiential courses. I took 3 of them, and that was in the spring term of this year.
Awesome.
I'm Zaynab Al-Shahidi, and I'm a third-year honors life sciences. The courses I took were Science 2 RP3, a research practicum within McMaster's biodiversity greenhouse, Science 1 SB1, a science research volunteer course on the symbiotic relationship between rhizobia and pea plants, Science 2 SE1 on collecting and using multi-person mobile eye tracking data, and Science 1 SC1, which is a graduate student shadowing course in Dr. Juliet Daniels' lab.
Incredible. And you guys have taken these one-unit courses, and a lot of them have been focused on research competencies. What are some of the skills that you guys walked out of those courses with?
Well, a huge part of these courses is the fact that you get experience. To be clear, for my courses, 2 of them were in EEG, which is a psychophysiological measure of brain activity. And they, stick a bunch of electrodes and wires onto your scalp and measure a population of neurons in your brain as they are active. And then another course that was B1 was about motion capture. As undergraduates, we learn a lot of theory in the beginning. And that's super important because you need theory to build later on. And you need that kind of framework to put in new knowledge and connect it all together. But we're really separated from the actual research process. So the fact of getting experience and just actually witnessing what you have to do to get the results that we study about and the results that form the theory that we learn is super valuable all by itself.
2 of my courses involved working with plants, so I gained a lot of skills working with plants, so maintaining them, taking care of them. One of the tasks that I did occasionally was pruning plants and clearing dead and yellowing leaves, and that would give healthy leaves space to grow. The Science 1 SB1, that involved the symbiotic relationship between pea plants and rhizobia. That one also had involved watering plants, preparing fertilizer media that was then going to be used to water plants. So both of these courses were really heavy on plant care and maintenance. And additionally, another thing I learned was communicating with visitors. The McMaster's Biodiversity Greenhouse opportunity, we occasionally had tours that we had to give. So just communicating to visitors, especially in a way that will allow them to understand the information that I'm saying about the plants.
Yeah, that's amazing. Honestly, I think one of the biggest things students talk about with research is, okay, well, we have all these amazing researchers. How do we actually get involved? What are some of the ways that we can learn these skills and really put that into practice? So it's really great to hear that these courses allowed both of you to do just that. So I know, Andrew, you had talked about you learned a lot of psychology-based tools and research regarding that. And Zaynab, you had mentioned about plants and a lot of that plant biology. Or were those areas you two are initially interested, or was this really branching out for you? What was that like?
Well, for both of these areas, obviously my degree is in psychology and neuroscience and behavior. So the techniques are very useful, very relevant, highly foundational for a lot of the research that we have to understand in this program. But initially, I didn't actually have a particular interest in EEG or motion capture. Both of those, were heavily linked to the live lab and study of music cognition, music perception, some mathematical modeling of things like dance. Not things I was super interested in, like a study perspective or as a career or as a research interest, but it was tangentially related to my field or to my interest. So I was like, why not? The technique is used in a lot of things, even if the particular mode of study isn't exactly my cup of tea.
I did have a small interest in plant biology, as I do have a hobby in planting and gardening. But it was really nice to do that from a research perspective and get even more deeper detail on it. So one of the projects that we did was we planted mimosa plants in different growing media. So one growing media was using regular pro-mix soil, another was using leca clay balls, and seeing how these different growing medias affected their growth. It was really nice taking something that I do as a hobby and on my own time and applying science to it and seeing it from a research perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that experience, my interest in plant biology grew.
So you guys discussed these research methodologies and these mediums you guys are using. What kind of outcomes were you looking at with these techniques?
All right, so for the motion capture course specifically, what we actually had to do is generate some data, which basically involves sticking these trackers, which are these kind of reflective balls, which these specialized motion capture cameras are, they're tracking them, or basically they're sending a wave out and then receiving it, kind of like echolocation in a dolphin. All right, so we had to create this data by having people dance on stage, and it's synchronized with specific tracks of music to allow us to analyze that data better later on, which we did end up doing not through Python, but through how do I say, some more like drag and drop style software, where we were like individually labeling these markers in an already kind of cleaned format without having to actually go quite deep into the code itself. Though we did cover a little bit of that. And for EEG, we did a very basic trial where we actually got to put the EEG caps onto ourselves and our fellow peers, and we got to see a silent condition, a beeping condition, a math condition, eyes closed condition, and that data we actually got to analyze in a separate workshop. So it was collected in C1 and analyzed in D1, and that was through MATLAB, which would be Python, yeah.
The workshop that I did on collecting and using multi-person mobile eye tracking data, the overall outcome for that workshop was to learn how mobile eye tracking devices could be implemented in our everyday lives. So one place they could be implemented is in schools. Another one could be even in businesses, so in grocery stores when we want to try to buy a product, even like positioning the product like on shelf, eye level on shelves, that could influence like our ability to buy things. So the overall outcome was to see how we could implement this in our everyday life and in the real world to influence our choices.
Wow, that's amazing. It's really interesting to hear about what you learned in the research courses that you took and how that can be really like applicable to real life. Like I never would have imagined, bringing that kind of technology into schools or into like daily life and grocery shopping. Like it's interesting to see that application, and it shows how hands-on the courses really are to building those real life skills. What would you say is some of like the skills aside from research, but skills that are super transferable into other jobs or as you move forward in your careers that you're hoping to take with you that you learned in these courses?
I think there's basically two major skills I could derive from my experiences. One for EEG, and actually like placing the cap on people, and that involved a lot of collaboration, like very synchronized, in order to put the cap on and make sure it's right, because the changes you make with its orientation or the amount of gel which you need to inject in order to like make up for the fact that people have hair, and you can't just kind of like stick wires onto their skin. There needs to be some medium between the skin and the electrode. It requires a lot of coordination. It requires a lot of collaboration to actually get it right, especially because we were all beginners. Like, none of us had done EEG previously. So there was a bit of that problem-solving aspect as well when we were trying to figure out, oh my gosh, why is this going wrong? And of course the professors helped, but there was definitely an independent element in there. And for the coding portions for, my motion capture and my EEG-related workshops, something really important is, I guess the best way to say it is precision. Like, you gotta really pay attention to minute details, because when you're trying to run this entire code to start with this raw EEG data and then tag it and analyze it and process it and turn it into a graph, something goes wrong in the middle somewhere, and you have to go through every single section to check it, and it's not fun. So, the extra precision you put and extra thoroughness that you put, in the beginning saves you a huge headache later on. And I could watch it in real time, just seeing the issues of my peers and how long it took to fix them, when initially it could have been evaded by, a double check or a little bit more careful reviewing of some line of code.
I think one skill that I'll definitely take away is the science communication that's involved in research, especially when giving tours in the greenhouse. You get a lot of visitors ranging from elementary school children to high school to university students and even parents that come with their children. And it's just super important to be able to communicate plant facts in a language that's accessible to diverse audiences, because they're not going to understand every single thing that you say about a plant species. And science communication is transferable to so many other fields in science and even in our daily lives. So that's definitely a skill that I'll take on no matter what field I go into.
Great. And you guys have learned these competencies and gained a newfound understanding or appreciation for these topics. These courses seem to have had a great effect on you. What would you guys recommend for first-year students looking to get involved in courses like this in terms of the process and what to look out for?
Well, the way I actually found out about these courses is, I think, a social net. Someone mentioned them to me. So, I looked at the website. I thought, these look neat. I might as well apply. I'm not doing anything else in that first part of the summer, after first year in my case. So I thought, I'll go for it and I'll apply for it. And that's the biggest piece of advice. Just go for it. Not everyone's heard of every opportunity. You're not competing with as many people as you think you are. And I promise you don't have that much to lose, okay? If you have time, you might as well use it. And, these research opportunities are really great. And even if you're not, particularly interested in the subject matter beforehand, at the end of it, you still get a lesson. You still get, an extra experience, an extra piece of skill that you can, carry with you later on.
My biggest advice to students is that not only should you apply to courses that you're interested in, but also apply to the ones that you typically wouldn't see yourself doing, because you never know whether you're going to like something or not without trying it first. And this is especially important for first-year students who may not know exactly what they want to go into. So definitely try opportunities that are out of your comfort zone and ones that you haven't tried before or ones that you wouldn't expect to like, because you never know, you might end up liking them.
It's really great to hear that you both took courses that really pushed you outside of your comfort zone. You were able to learn something new. I know you got to take your hobby, Zaynab, and really explore it in this scientific domain. And Andro, you were able to take these psychology skills that you had just seen in lecture or seen in the textbook and really do them yourselves. Put that gel on for the caps, which is amazing. I've seen videos, but it's cool to know that you actually got to do it and be so hands-on. In science, we are really big fans of fun facts. What is something that you left with either your workshops or whether you were in class that day and you left and you were like, oh my gosh, I love what I just learned. I have to tell everybody that I see. What is some fun fact that you would like to share with everyone who's watching?
I think something particularly comical from the EEG workshops was within the lecture portion where they kind of explain, the basics of EEG and the theory behind it and the experimental design aspects. There was just this slide with this baby on it. and it just had these electrodes just sticking out of its head, and it was just the most funny thing. Just so many wires attached to these electrodes on this little baby's head, like it's a little string puppet. And what was really interesting was when they were talking about the experimental design with baby studies with respect to EEG. They talked about how they have to have a person calm the baby and make sure the baby's not tired or not too fussy, not too agitated, or else the data isn't exactly clean anymore, because you have the typical mental state of a baby, and then you have like an agitated mental state, which obviously creates a lot of noise in the brain. And it's just so funny just imagining this PhD, all right, or this master's student or this grad student, like just top of their field, really specialized study. Maybe it's like some revolutionary work, and they just have to really focus with this baby, make sure this baby's calm, cater to this baby's needs and everything. Now, of course, it's for the baby's comfort, itself, but it's also for the cleanliness of the data, which is just so funny.
In the workshop where we collected and used multi-person mobile eye tracking data, we learned that if this technology and if these devices were to be implemented within schools, teachers can use the data from these devices to determine whether a student is dozing off or not from just the duration of their blink. So if their blink lasts just a couple milliseconds extra, it could be that they're starting to doze off, they're becoming sleepy, and they're paying less attention to the teacher.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your insights. Both of those facts are not just funny, but I'm not sure if I want that kind of research to come out. The kids at school, let them rest. But the experiences you guys have shared and the tips you guys have given will be incredibly informative for first years. And it's really helpful for developing that foundational interest in the specializations you want to go into as you progress throughout your journey through research. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, we're really grateful for all of the insight you share for students, just like Andy had mentioned. And if you're watching and you want to learn more about some of the experiences or the courses that both Andro and Zaynab took, please feel free to follow us at McMaster OUR and to stay updated on these opportunities.